You're listening to Greenovation with Diane Naidu, the show where global warming is always a hot topic and green entrepreneurs are even hotter, where we chat to ordinary citizens who are innovating extraordinary climate solutions.
Good morning, listeners. You're tuned into Brand Live's Greenovation show. And as you know, we love talking all things climate change, climate justice. We talk things global warming, and always the most exciting thing is talking about entrepreneurs and innovation in the space. This morning we have an exciting lineup. We are joined by 3 guests in studio, and I think we'll start straight away with you, Lerato Ngakani from Greenpeace. They've started a campaign called Break Free. Lerato, thank you for joining us. Please tell our listeners, what is this Break Free campaign all about?
Thanks for having us, Diane. Basically, Greenpeace is leading Break Free this year, but it's not a Greenpeace initiative. Basically, 350 did it last year, and we're heading it this year. But what Break Free is about bringing local organizations, women organizations, environmental organizations under one umbrella, and really just pushing the climate change and leaving fossil fuels topic to the forefront.
Well, I like that. I particularly like that it's bringing people together, and I think, excuse me, I've had this conversation with your former CEO or your executive director before, Michael Onyeka. We've discussed this at length and saying, look, there are so many parties that are doing so many different things. Exactly. At times it seems a bit disparate. It seems as though everyone has their own agenda. So I'm really happy that parties and organizations are coming together to drive this agenda.
Yeah.
What does it mean that you actually do?
Basically, from across the world, over 6 continents, we've got like about 60 countries taking part. So everybody is just focusing on one element of this whole fossil fuel debate. So here in South Africa, we're focused on coal. Korea's focused on air pollution. Other people are focused on nuclear. So there's different parts of it that we're all playing under all of this. So we just feel that it's time that this conversation starts coming out to the forefront, especially speaking to the ordinary man and bringing real stories to people, let climate change not just be a thing in the background that people talk about, but people are actually really starting to experience what it is.
Okay, so then for our listeners, for those of you who are maybe tuning in for the first time, climate change is often viewed as a white middle class issue. It doesn't affect the poor, doesn't affect black people, but it certainly is an issue. So perhaps let's take the conversation back a bit and say, what's so bad about fossil fuels? I mean, you have people saying, well, it has provided jobs over the years. We are a commodities-based economy. What happens to those coal workers if we shut down all of our mines? And what's so bad about coal? What's so bad about nuclear? What is the crux of this debate, and why should South Africans care about it?
I definitely, this conversation is interesting because at the end of the day, we're dealing with bread and butter issues, especially in South Africa. When we speak about growth and economy, we're speaking about jobs and job losses. Like we were talking the other day, there was the coal drivers strike, rather. And those people are saying, listen, if renewable energy comes in, we are out. Where are we going to go? So these issues are things that we have to take into consideration when we're speaking about renewable energy and doing the whole just transition. We're not saying coal is bad. Coal is bad, but it has to be a just transition because there are lives at stake.
And what is a just transition? I'm just saying we're talking in terms that we use in our conversations, and obviously in this environmental space, it's a common phrase for you and I, but what about our listeners? Just? What does it mean?
It's an inclusive transition, and it's a gradual transition because you can't do it all overnight. We can't go 100% renewable overnight, definitely not. So we actually really have to do it step by step and include everybody who was in the coal sector and say, hey, how about upskilling? How about where can we fit you in, to actually face a future? It's a brave new world out there, and we don't know how it's going to come about, but let's start shifting towards that because at the rate we're going right now, it ain't happening. There's not going to be much of a future.
Yeah. I think for me, like as you were mentioning, people have their different biases and their own preferences of what they'd like to take up as a cause. And for me in particular, I always talk about the food, energy, water nexus, which is critical for me. The way that we are at the moment generating the bulk of our energy is through coal. And I say it every time. I don't get tired of saying it. I want our listeners to hear about it every single time. That for our coal-generated electricity, we are using 120,000 litres of clean drinking water per second. So that already says to me that coal is not a sustainable way of generating energy in South Africa. People might say, but we do have it in great supply. We don't know when it's going to run out.
It's a finite
commodity. And also for me, the thing is that coal is traded on the stock exchange. So it might fluctuate, but it's a constantly climbing commodity to purchase. Whereas wind and solar, we're not paying for it over a long period of time. And if the country was to commit to a great transition to scaling up our renewable energy plants that we do have in the country, then we can start to compare apples with apples.
For sure.
I think World Wildlife Fund, WWF South Africa, had done some study, and it had been coming on for years, that we haven't quite looked as a country at the actual cost of coal mining in South Africa. We can't talk purely about infrastructure builds. We've got to talk about the impact on the environment. We've got to talk about, beyond the economy, what is the real cost of coal in South Africa, the cost in terms of our natural resources. So these are important conversations. And listeners, if you are tuned in, we are not simply tree huggers. We're not people that are concerned only about saving the rhino. These are real issues. And I think it's important that ordinary people take up the cause, start having these conversations and mobilizing their communities. Whether your community is at home, at a car wash, whether your community is in your place of work or in your social circles, start having conversations where you start to get involved in the decisions which are being made about your future, not only yours, but also for your kids. And I think at this point, I'd like to introduce and welcome Ernest Pachle to our show this morning. Ernest, it's great to have you here. In fact, since I think it was the lady from Earthlife we had met with last when we started talking about the work that you've been doing, and perhaps in most parts for people who are not involved in the space, don't know that for me in South Africa, you're an unsung hero. So thank you so much for your time today, Ernest.
Thanks for having me, Diane, and good evening to your listeners.
Thank you. Ernest, can you just tell us a bit about your background? I mean, people often, again, the assumption is this green issue is a white issue. This green issue is a middle-class issue. Where did you come from? Where were you working? What was your life like when you decided to become an environmental activist, if I can call it that?
You're quite correct. I am one. I think I need to start by saying that at my first instance into contact with fossil fuels, I started working with a company called Optimum Colliery down in Mpumalanga province. It's one of the biggest coal-producing companies in mines, in fact, in South Africa. I started working there, I think, 2004. That was my first start of work, and I worked as a miner, and then graduated into being a shift boss. As always, as you start to work, it's always exciting, thinking about all good things. Money is going to come popping in and all that. But it's not all glims and glads of what we think. As always, as a person gets a job and they want to, provide for their families and all that, and you covered and stuff is good at home. It comes with a lot of sacrifice, especially with your own health, because having worked at the mining environment, it wasn't such an exciting thing at all after a lot of years that I've been working there. Quite fairly, it did provide me with a lot of resources and for the family as well. And yes, those years were quite exciting. I won't forget them. But it came to a point when, as years goes by, I experienced a lot of sicknesses that I couldn't, determine whether they were natural sicknesses or whether they work-inclined sicknesses, but anything that has to do with my working environment. But it became a concern to a point when I went to the health facilities at my working place, and then I was told that I can only contact the mine doctor, as I was not allowed to go to my private doctor. reason known to only my employers, not myself, because it wasn't disclosed to me as to why I should do that.
Wow.
And having been assessed by the medical doctor at the medical station in my working environment, our company doctor didn't want to confirm and to divulge as to what was the cause of my illnesses, because I sometimes could feel some itchy stuff on my skin, and sometimes my skin would peel off, literally peel off.
Wow.
Sometimes I would experience some hard breathing. I couldn't breathe very well. I could hardly sleep at night at some nights, and that really rose a concern to me. But my employers told me that it's probably that I have inhaled something from somewhere, but definitely nothing from the company, because there's a lot of people that have been working there before me. Some of them, as it was quoted, I think so, in a parameters of 35 years working there, and I was only on my 10th year working there when I experienced those kind of health problems. It was taken up with the HR, and the HR promised to send me to the specialist out. But again, the company kept on blanketing this whole thing and smothering it, not to be known anywhere, not even by myself, about my own health. I took it upon myself to go to my own private doctor, because all the results that came with the company doctor, they were kept secret, and they were not divulged to me for me to know exactly what was happening with my health. But it went to a point when I literally just didn't go to work anymore. I would tell them that I'm not fine. I'm feeling not okay. I'm not going to avail myself for work. I want to go to the doctor, see a doctor, because I had some breathing problems, serious breathing problems. My lungs were like literally blocked in their lung pockets.
Wow.
And as I mentioned before, I could hardly sleep at night, and those people couldn't understand really exactly what was my my personal physical experience at night while I was asleep. They could sleep very well in their places, because they were not in first touch with the product itself, the coal dust that I inhaled. So in a nutshell, from my private doctor, I think it took about 2 weeks before I could go collect the results from him, because I told him that I want to personally come and collect results so that he can give me a breakdown of as to what is going on with my health, and what could be the problem, what could be the possible cause of that, for instance. When I went after 2 weeks to collect the results, and he told me that, what I'm about to tell you right now, it's not looking good for you. Your lungs have got an infection, and I think in a mining language they call it silicosis. That my lung pockets were beginning to close down bit by bit. Some of them were swelling. They were beginning to swell out, and as they close. I took the report to the HR personnel. I said I have the report, and I was advised that I should make only copies of the report that came from the doctor, and for me to keep the originals, because they could fiddle around with stuff and make sure that nobody knows nothing about that. They could take all the documents and then just put them away, or trash them somewhere in the bin. Now I made copies of that. Went to them, brought them to my HR department. My HR told me that I am not allowed. I was told that I'm not allowed to talk to you about these things. You need to go and talk to the company doctor. I said, but you are my employer. You're the one that made me sign on the dotted lines. And now I think you're the first person that needs to know as to what is happening with my health, and why I keep on abstaining myself from work from time to time. And I was told that, your bosses told us that this thing of yours of not coming to work every time, it has become to be a trend now, and they are not happy with your performance in terms of attendance at work. Now they were beginning to try and build a case against me. I was aware of that before time, and I told them that if you want to talk anything with regards to my health and my not coming to work from time to time, you need to talk to my doctor as well, because I've got a private doctor that I'm attending, that I go consult, and he's told me that I've got a very serious lung problem, and that lung problem could cause cancer as time goes on if it's not attended to. having submitted those results to my HR, the HR told me that okay, it's fine. We'll come back to you and take a leave. I was given, I think, a 2 months long leave.
Wow.
Leave with pay at first, and I was told that you shouldn't come nearby the company premises unless your 2 months is dealt with, or enjoyed it, and you come to work and report that your 2 months is gone, and then we take you to our specialist, and our specialist will take you for further examinations as to whether you've developed or you've come all right or not. Yes, primarily I think basically that was the primary situation of what took place at work after having worked for about 9 to 10 years, I think. Yeah.
And did you find that there were other workers complaining of similar health problems? Was this an isolated incident? Saying there must have been something more besides your own health that you could see something was amiss?
You'll be shocked if I could mention to you that I think 6 to 8 of my ex-colleague workers had passed on during the time of my illness. From the first year until my 10th year, I think I had about 6 to 8 ex-workers who passed on due to the similar type of illness that I got there. And we were told that as it always is said out loud, it's a natural cause. Yeah. That this person had experienced some tuberculosis complications and all that, but the source of tuberculosis was not divulged as to what was
causing it.
Yeah, because it was there were so many underlying causes of why people had contacted TB or had TB. It's because of the coal dust that they inhaled each and every day when they go there. Because remember, we work in shifts. Sometimes you had to work about 12 to 16 hour shift long.
Wow.
And mind you, the mere exposure of you being there for such long hours, it was very detrimental for one's health.
Well, listeners, if you're tuning in, we're chatting to Ernest Patle. He's joining us this morning to chat about the Greenpeace Break Free campaign, which they are running with this year. We're talking anti-fossil fuels. We're saying no to more fossil fuels in South Africa, and we're certainly saying absolutely no to nuclear. Ernest has been chatting to us about his personal experiences he had working in the coal mine. I personally don't believe in coal. In fact, when we're doing any documents, we don't even print anything in black. We use a percentage of it because black is just so representative of coal to me. Ernest, so that was the start of your journey as an environmental activist. You had seen and experienced firsthand what the impact of this coal dust was on your own health and those of your colleagues. Yeah. What does it mean that you do as an ordinary, and I'm saying again, ordinary citizen? Because often people feel like it's left for the politicians or the lobbyists or people who sit in offices to actually become activists. What is it that you do in your personal capacity on a day-to-day basis as an environmental activist, talking about the dangers of coal?
Personally, coming back from the township in Palm Springs, back in the Vaal, we normally partnering with Earthlife Africa, which is based in Bloemfontein, in Johannesburg. We have programs that we put in place, things like workshops, where we call all the ordinary community members to come and sit in and then listen to the presentations or the workshop seminars that we have with them. So as for them to understand the dangers and the detriments of the coal energy or the fossil fuels in general. What danger they pose to their lives. We conduct workshops, we do seminars, we do film screens for them to see exactly what's happening and what actually make their lives and their healths at stake or in danger at the current moment. Now we make them understand that it is not that we say let them all get shut down. Places where coal is being produced as a means of energy, but we say to them that these are the dangers associated with that, and we need to minimize as much as we can the production of such. That's what we're trying to put across as a message to our community basic ordinary community members, for them to understand and know the dangers of coal production and coal produced energy generation.
What has been the response? I'm always keen to hear what, I speak in different environments, and for me, I'm always interested to hear what are the communities saying. Like when you're doing your presentation, you say, look, these are the dangers, this is what we believe in, this is why we should be pursuing clean energy. What are the sentiments? What can you give us examples of what people are saying in response to you?
We've been so fortunate that we have maximum participation of community members in my township, and some of them have worked in mines like Sigma back in Sasolburg, down in Sasolburg.
Mm-hmm.
There's a mine called Sigma. It's a coal production mine as well. So a lot of people that are staying in the Palm Springs had a first-hand experience of what coal could do in one's health, because they once worked there. A lot of them have got now severe TB, I think level 2-3 TB, and they're suffering heavily on that, and then they have to, go out and get their own medication. If they have money. If they don't have, they have to go and settle for the minimal medication that they can get from the clinics and community healthcare centers. So the response has been very positive from people, and but especially young people. We engage young people, and just to try and let them know that this will be what's going to happen to you in the future if you don't become cautious of trying to rid yourself and choose a better career path for yourselves, not to get ourselves into danger of working in an environment where you will be exposed to such things that have made us to be people that we are now, as ill as we are. And young people have been very, very positive in terms of responding, and they too actually have started to initiate some, community youth programs that they are now leading currently. We've left everything absolutely in their hands, but we always from time to time monitor as to what is the progress and then where is it leading to. But in general, the response has been very positive and it's been appalling.
Great. Listeners, we're chatting Break Free campaign, which is being run by Greenpeace. We're chatting all things anti-fossil fuels and nuclear, and I strongly believe, and I tweet about it and I talk about it all the time, fossil fuels and nuclear costs. It doesn't pay. We're going to go to a short ad break and come back and chat a bit more to Lerato.
Have you ever thought about the power of social media? Social media has the power to make your business grow. Grow! Yeah. Why don't you let us manage your social media? Because our business is to see your business grow. Visit us at www.beastownmedia.co.za.
If you're looking for an information technology and communication solution company suitable for your small or medium-sized enterprise, then look no further than Hive ICT. They aim to provide SMEs with the same level of service expected by large corporations without sacrificing the personal relationship they have with their customers. Offering remote and on-site support, as well as IT system design, network design and installations, server and workstation maintenance, and web design, web application development, and more. Visit www.hiveict.com right away.
Hi, listeners. You're tuned into the Brand Live Green Ovation station, and we are coming to you live from 27 Boxes in Melville. We are joined in studio this morning by Mandy Momberg, Ernest Patle, and they've been introduced to me this morning by Lerato from Greenpeace. We're talking Break Free campaign and what it's all about, how you can get involved. And I think at that point, Lerato, we'd like to hear from you. What is Greenpeace saying? How can, again, we keep talking about ordinary citizens. How can ordinary citizens get involved in this discussion on fossil fuels and the anti-nuclear campaign? How do they engage and how do they spread the word?
As I said earlier, Break Free is like a people's movement. It involves everybody. So Greenpeace, along with our partners, ACRP, we've got EarthLife also involved. We've come together, and what we're trying to do is create a platform for South Africans to engage on and practice their democratic right, because we have a vibrant democracy, and we don't want people to feel powerless. People feel powerless in situations like this. Like, what can I do in my personal capacity? But our call to action is basically, we need people to sign or comment on the IRP. What is the IRP? A lot of people probably don't even know. Is the integrated resource plan, which is the energy mix that informs what goes into our electricity grid. You know, what is it that we're putting into our electricity? What percentage should we have of renewable energy? What percentage should we have of coal and nuclear? And currently it is out for comment, and the comments are closing on 31st of March. So we really want the public to go onto our platforms. We're going to be creating a platform where people can just send an email to the DOE, Department of Energy, saying we want more renewable in the grid. That's what we want people to do. That's the power that we want to give to people.
That's great. And then during the course of this week, I see that you had like a lot of media intervention set up. And how did you go about selecting the people that you would be happy to have as spokespersons, if we can call them that?
Yes, they're like our ambassadors. They are break-free ambassadors, and they've been doing so well. Basically, the ACRP, which is one of our partners, and EarthLife brought us together with our ambassadors, and we've sat down. I've spoken to all of them, you know, and they all have such incredible stories. Ernest's story is like such an everyday man story, because so many miners in South Africa don't speak about these things, or they don't have the platform or opportunity to speak about the problems or the harsh realities of living in areas like that or working in conditions like that. And basically we've partnered up with them, and we've just been on a roll, going out, spreading the message, making these stories real, because at the end of the day, sometimes it feels like it's so far removed, because you just switch on your light in the kitchen and that's electricity. But that's not electricity. You know, there's lives at stake. You know, there's the environment that's being damaged. There's it's scary.
No, I agree. I mean, there was a nice campaign, in fact a great campaign which WWF was running, saying water does not come from a tap. So it's very similar. It's a similar message and a similar sentiment which we are sharing with people. And again, the water issue is massive. We already have huge food insecurity issues. I mean, people like to talk about food security, but if it's so low, let's rather talk about the insecurity and address it and come up with solutions. So on the show, what we do week after week is we enjoy and we absolutely love chatting to green entrepreneurs, people who are seeing the green space as an opportunity to not only have a livelihood, but also a means to contribute in some meaningful way to society. In fact, just last week we had someone from the ICRD group, and they recently hosted these workshops for entrepreneurs in the water space. And that's exciting because, and I believe in it, that our problems in the country and in the continent means that we have probably the best environment to innovate solutions unlike what the rest of the world might see.
We've got so much sunshine. Countries like Ireland use solar, but they don't even have as much sunshine as we are. So why are we not leading this conversation? And this is what we want to challenge government with. You guys need to have this conversation and lead it, because we can't carry on like this, you know.
And I just want to talk a bit more about, and again, we've had different views on our chat show, and we've spoken to different people, and to hear what their perspectives are, because the nuclear issue, I mean, I'd done an interview with Kumi Naidu as well, and he was saying this is a social justice issue. Can you share with our listeners what is it that Greenpeace is saying? Why is it a social justice issue?
Environmental rights are always like bottom of the list. You know, you have your human rights, women's rights, and environment, nobody really touches on them. So I would say it is a social justice in that it involves everybody's lives. We will be all affected should nuclear come into the picture. I know that there's an argument that nuclear is a green energy because it doesn't emit, or there's no emissions, but at the end of the day, it's the toxicity that's going to take away from the quality of people's lives, especially those living around those plants and stuff.
I believe that Kumi had actually issued a challenge, and I won't mention to who, but it's from the highest ranks. He was saying, if you're saying nuclear is so safe, move your entire family right next to the plant. If you're saying there's no problem with the nuclear deal. And I quite like that sentiment. We don't often challenge what government is saying. We don't interrogate what they present as facts, and maybe we should call it what Trump calls it, alternative facts about fossil fuels and nuclear. I think that's really what it's about. And for me, I think we'd spoken to the chairman for Sapvia, and his view was very clear. We just cannot afford it. It doesn't make fiscal sense for us to invest in nuclear. It just doesn't. And with in a country where we are completely like water-stricken, water-stressed, why are we investing in coal mines even more, which will sap the little bit that we have left? Yeah? We're going to a short break. And when we come back, we're going to be speaking to Mandy Momberg and hear about the opportunities inside this green entrepreneurial space. What does it mean to be involved in the Break Free campaign as an entrepreneur, as a woman, as an environmental activist? We'll go to a short break and we'll be back.
You're listening to brandlife.co.za, an industry first in the world of internet radio. Not only are we an internet radio station, we are an internet radio platform for your brand. So why not expose your brand to potentially thousands of listeners and improve your customer relationships and brand equity with podcasts and live broadcasts? Be sure to check brandlife.co.za for more information. brandlife.co.za, harnessing the power of internet radio.
And you're back on the Greenovation Show, where we are chatting the Break Free campaign, which is being run by Greenpeace this year. And it's a collective effort to get these different organizations, different environmental lobbying bodies together under one umbrella, if we can call it that, and basically being powered by one engine to drive the cause for clean energy in South Africa. For those of you who have heard the show, listened to the show before, you know I'm a little bit obsessed about clean energy. I've seen the power of it. I've witnessed it firsthand. I've seen, and I strongly believe in clean energy because it's probably the only industry in South Africa that is making money. It is our fastest growing market. It has the opportunity to really change lives in South Africa. I was particularly impressed with just the way in which the whole tender process was run by government, where different parts of these tenders were given to different departments. So you had a section which was completely handed over and packaged for the Department of Environmental Affairs. You had a different part of that tender which went to the Department of Economic Development and to Treasury. And I like the way in which it was unpacked, if you can call it that, so that experts in a particular field could look at and assess what was working and what wasn't working. I say it often and I'm going to say it again. Nuclear costs, coal costs, clean energy pays. For me, there's a bright future for South Africa if we are going to commit to the IRP 2016 and our ambitions of driving a low carbon or zero carbon economy, if we can ever get there. Mandy, I wanted to chat to you this morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Diane. Thank you so much for hosting such an important conversation.
Great. We love having different people on our show every week. We like getting different perspectives. Tell us a bit more about what it is that you do. I've read the whole descriptor, but I'd like in simple terms, what is it that you do on a day-to-day basis?
Well, Diane, every day is not the same. I'm an environmental consultant and I've been doing this for close on 30 years. I run a small company myself and I partner with a bunch of other companies and initiatives. I'm representing the African Climate Reality Project in conjunction with the Earth Life and Greenpeace, and we're promoting this Break Free campaign because it's a critical hot topic that we need to bring into everyday conversation because it's everyday people that are affected by this. It's not a middle class white issue.
Yeah, I think, in fact, I will confess, I had a bit of a rant on Facebook when I saw this weekend people were complaining about the cycle tour which was cancelled. It was not only the strong winds, but there was also the issue of the protests from these informal settlements and people. I mean, there were some scathing comments, and it's just sad that in a country where I think, and I try to hope and believe that we have progress, that people they defer to their basest selves and start talking about things like they and them and push those people into different places. And you might be wondering why I'm talking about it. It is a social justice issue in that people don't care about climate change unless It ruins the Sunday cycle tour. It's just insane. And I was saying it's a middle class issue versus a real issue. You're talking service delivery protests, but you would never start to unpack and look at who those people are until they're on your doorstep when riots are taking place. So I'm just saying it's a very complex issue. Our environmental state in South Africa, our natural resources, there is a ripple effect on the economy. There is a ripple effect on whether we are actually creating jobs, whether we are seeing more people having an improved quality of life or not. Mandy, I'd like to find out, you say you've been doing this for 30 years, and I ask the question, I think Oketso, our producer's probably a bit tired of it, but I ask people all the time, why did you get involved in this field? Was it something you studied when you were growing up? Did you spend time with the crickets and hugging trees? What was it that got you into the space of becoming an environmental activist?
Well, Diane, to be honest with you, my original driver was I did not want to work with people. I'd seen enough at a very early age.
That's very honest.
Of what the impacts of people have on our environment. So I studied nature conservation, and my first 17 years I dealt with conservation issues, protected areas, but got a little bit bored with that as time progressed, realizing that you were really looking after a tract of land that's already looked after. And the real impacts were happening where development was happening. So my career path diverted a little bit in the government, and I started considering the environmental impact assessments and authorizing that. From that, after being with the provincial government for 17 years, again, you get a little bit bored with things and you look for new challenges, and I ended up in the mining industry for 2 years.
We won't hold it against you, Mandy. We will not hold it against you. We don't judge.
I convinced myself back then that somebody needed to help them get it right, and it was going to be me.
Yeah.
So I worked in a copper mine for 2 years as environmental specialist, integrating the biodiversity action plan, because the mine borders the Kruger National Park, and there are no fences between them. So the lions and the elephants were on the mine property. So they asked me, or they brought me in to bring that balance back for them. And at that point, I was approached by PricewaterhouseCoopers in Johannesburg to run the climate change project for them. There weren't many people back then that knew anything about climate change. And I was brought in to manage what was known as the designated operations entity, which is effectively the auditing body for carbon emission reduction projects. So we audited projects in South Africa and in Africa for carbon emission offset trading through the United Nations program. And I did that for a number of years for them. And then also ERM CVS, which is a London-based company with offices in Johannesburg, and I ran the African projects for them. And the last, probably going on 6 years now, have been in the private consulting space for my own companies. So I think it just gets in your blood.
I think, I don't know, maybe the question cannot be directed to you per se, but I have found that in corporate South Africa, sustainability is a tick box. It's more of a PR exercise. We don't find many companies who are really committed to sustainability in terms of the operations, number one, energy efficient buildings, ensuring that the sources of energy are clean, the use of water inside their offices. I just find that it's still pretty new in South Africa.
Well, I think all business are driven by the bottom line. And the fascinating thing is that with sustainability issues, the bottom line is driving the conversation. So being transparent in reporting what your environmental impacts are is actually having a positive knock-on effect for companies that are listed on the stock exchanges, and also for them disclosing what their carbon emission reductions are. It's a voluntary program, but the CDP program is there for companies to disclose. And over the last 6 years that the CDP has been running in South Africa, the conclusion is that if you're not disclosing, you're actually losing shareholder investments. Your investors are looking around saying, I don't want to be associated with you. I need to go to a more environmentally sensitive company. And unless you are transparent and responsible in the way you are dealing with the natural resources we have, you're losing business.
Yeah, and I think just as an example, I mean, like I've done a couple of trips to different parts of Europe, where it's incredible. The fact that they are using clean energy is a driver of the GDP. The fact that the energy is so cheap because it is clean, even from one small company to a beast of a business, it all contributes collectively towards the country's GDP. It makes sense to go green. It makes sense to
It does.
get your power from the sun or to recycle your water, grey water recycling. I'm just saying.
It does.
It makes sense in Europe. It's not only and I think I've got a great friend. His name is Sam Metzachi. We've loved each other dearly for many years, and he's worked in this green space, and he's worked for a Danish company that produces all these wind turbines. And he always says to me, "Darling, I think you get so emotionally invested. Green is the color of money in Europe." But it's true.
Yeah.
And I think if people approach sustainability from the point of view that it makes economic sense beyond the environmental part, it just makes sense to go green. Ernest, your thoughts on that?
Thanks again, Dan. Look, Dan, you talk about renewable energy. You talk about green. You talk about sustainability itself, in its core, in fact. Because there's no way that the sun will ever go away. Otherwise, if we don't have a sun, we don't have a light, then there's no life.
Yeah.
There's no way that we're gonna run out of or lack wind at all in our lifetime. And you know, such things will give you an indication that is so highly sustainable. We will forever and ever, you know, until some people say Jesus comes, I don't know, but until whoever comes, we'll forever have that with us, and we'll forever cherish that. And that's what makes the whole energy generation of such to be sustainable, because they will never die, they will never go away, they will always be there, come what may. And more especially in South Africa, we have lots of sunlight, sun raises. I mean, we can literally develop a lot of production of solar energy from the sun rays that we trap from the ordinary sun that comes from skies. We have a lot of winds down in your coastal places. We've got a lot of sun down up in your Limpopo regions and Mpumalanga, where really solar energy can be there in galore and in tons. So I'm certain, and I have a very positive mind and very optimistic that if we can start to source such, we will have a forever sustainable energy ever in any parts of the world, because South Africa is one country that is blessed with natural resources, especially solar, sun and wind.
I think I love what you're saying. I mean, the current Prime Minister for India, Narendra Modi, before he even became the Prime Minister, he started this incredible campaign. I'm just saying it's visionary. It's disruptive, but it was innovative. He didn't approach the whole energy thing as let's look at the Department of Energy. Let's look at, again, social injustices, what we were talking about. So in a shanty town, he said, look, can we rent a rooftop? So it became a source of income for people living in shanties or in shacks, as they call them. We're not saying that living in a shack is acceptable. But while we are in the process of sorting out the housing issue, let's give these people a source of income. They contribute towards energy that gets fed into the grid. They make some money from it. They take care of the maintenance of it. I'm just saying we haven't quite unpacked what is possible in South Africa. I know that the Sustainability Institute, which is based out in Stellenbosch, they've started similar initiatives where they've gone, and it's incredible, where again, people are living in shacks in their own makeshift homes, and they've created a gated community. It's insane.
Wow.
They've got a team of security guards that patrol the area. They've got solar power on their rooftops as well, which they're now feeding into the local municipality. So this community of people who have said, yes, we're going to do it. Yes, we're going to try to create our own community, get our own water. And they've started with grey water recycling. They've got rainwater harvesting tanks.
That's incredible.
So I'm just saying it's one example. And for me, we just haven't thought about it, not even hard. We haven't even looked at what the options are. What have you found, Mandy?
I tend to agree with you, and I agree with what Ernest has said, that renewable energies are a way to go forward. But we do need to solve the situation or the technology about storing of energy, because that renewable energy is only available when the sun shines and when the wind blows. So at night, which is often when most of us are at home wanting to cook our meals and watch TV or recharge our cell phones, it wouldn't be available if we only relied on renewables. So we do need a base load, and that is supplied by constant energy coal, nuclear, or gas, all of which have the environmental impact. So we do need to be sensible how we go about balancing that and bringing that energy mix into our energy generation.
Okay, so I'll throw something at you quickly. I think we've got about 10 more minutes, so we've got some time to unpack it. So you go to Europe and you find out that baseload is an old way of doing things. They don't use baseload at all, because on one day, for example, in just Denmark alone, they generate 120% of what the country needs. The entire country, just of wind. So Denmark exports a lot and they buy a bit of energy as well. So they've got a fantastic little grid that works. And without any nuclear or coal as baseload, it works. They've got reserves. So whether it means that they need to buy their energy from Sweden or from Norway, which is, in fact, most of it is hydroelectricity.
Yeah.
They make sure that they work with all these forecasts. It's a very sophisticated system. And what infuriates me is that our team from Eskom and our team from the Department of Energy and our team from the Department of Environmental Affairs, Trade and Industry, Economic Development, Treasury, they've seen that it's possible. It's doable. And again, when we were working, and it was many years back, I'd worked on the RP 2010 lobbying campaign. And we had the same discussion with the officials from the Department of Energy and Eskom saying, well, we don't have enough wind in the country. I mean, you look at the maps every single day. So what we did was, as a collective from the renewable energy sector, we said, fine, go dig back 20 years worth of weather data. Buy it because it's there. It's
along the
always
coastlines.
going to be there. So I'm just saying we haven't quite, and that for me, sorry, Mandy, for me it's just the myth that they sell us. It's a myth that we need baseload. If other countries have shown that it's not necessary, that it's an old way of doing things, it's a way of holding on to these not so clean energy sources, I say we just haven't tried. Again, I promise you, it was a huge delegation that had met with them. They've seen it work. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Diana, I hear what you're saying, and I tend to agree with you. But I do think we also need to look at the economies of scale, the size of the population in Denmark and the economy versus the spread of South Africa's landmass and the communities that we have living from the industrial communities to those that are living off-grid or that don't have grid energy available to them. So we do need to look at that in totality. The IRP that is out for public comment now does look at forecasts until 2050 and looking at the different energy mixes. Essentially, the proposal is to bring our coal reliance down from the 80% for our energy mix that it is at the moment to about 20% by 2050. So in 2050, we'll still be using some coal, but only 20% of what we're using now. But there will be nuclear in the mix and gas in the mix, unless public stakeholder comments come forward and there's justification for considering other solutions or other scenarios. And that's why it's critically important that people do take the time to go and read those documents and to submit the comments by the end of the month to the Department of Energy. And that's what our conversations are about, is to the everyday person saying, get involved, understand where your energy is coming from, understand what a fully charged cell phone really means to the environment and to your health and to the community's health living around there.
Look, well, I attended, thank you for that, Mandy. I attended the African Development Bank annual meetings in Zambia last year, and the theme for last year was climate change empowering Africa. It was an incredible commitment from many heads of states across the continent, committing to ensuring that Africa is powered. And I mean, there were 1 or 2 comments in this, like it or lump it or do with it what you will. But we did have someone saying, look, when someone is hungry, they're not going to ask you where you got the food from. So it's probably the same thing in South Africa, where we've got real issues. People don't live in houses that are hygienic. They don't live in communities where there are sufficient fire breaks between the houses. Just saying what we are creating, and I think again it was a discussion which I had in fact many conversations with Michael Onyeka, where we were saying we're not creating mega cities, we are creating mega slums, and by the year 2030, 2050, when the population has exploded, we will not see mega cities, we will see mega slums. Our food security, energy security, job security will be something of the past. It will not be something that people know. So I'm saying we've got to look at
We do.
different solutions. And again, at this at the annual meetings last year, I mean, there was a great commitment saying, look, we're not saying that we've got to build utility scale plants all the time. It might be rooftop, a mix of rooftop plus microgrids which are enabled across the continent. And I think, in fact, we're working with Resolution Circle and one or two other parties where we are looking at bringing out, our publication is the Green Innovation publication, but we're looking at bringing out a publication which speaks to entrepreneurs and startups, where they can understand where the funding is, how much funding there is available, what is the criteria, what do they need to do, because it's not going to come from government, it's not going to come from the corporate sector. So we need to have these critical conversations more and more and more with ordinary people saying, I've got a solution, I've got an idea. Go and find funding, test it, pilot it, make it work, show the world that it works. So for me, these conversations are so important. And in fact, when, I forget her name, what is her name from Earthlife? She came and met with us.
I think it's Norma.
No, it wasn't Norma. I forget her name. But anyways, when we were chatting, we were just saying we need to have more of these conversations. And these conversations need to exist outside of this space that we are in, outside of our boardrooms, outside of the community halls.
Okay.
I'm a firm believer in everyday conversations that change people's way of thinking, that stimulate innovation. You know, hearing about, and I've been saying to Koketsa, I want to bring this boy to South Africa. He is a war orphan from Sierra Leone. In fact, he's such a war orphan that his name is Calvin Doe, like a John Doe. But at the age of 14, he was living on what was a flea market and used these, used computer waste to make his own little battery.
Wow.
Then he made a battery big enough to power that community. Unschooled, uneducated, didn't think of being an entrepreneur, but it was in him.
Yeah.
And Harvard and all these business schools said, come. And he's got his qualifications now. He's 19 years old. But for me, when we introduce a young person like that who's come, and again, we've got no excuse in this country. He's a war orphan. He had nobody. He had nothing. But he took his nothing and made something of it. Listeners, we're just about to wrap. We've got Mandy Momberg in studio with us. Ernest Patley, our fantastic energy activist, ex-miner, and Lerato Ngake. Is that Gankani? I did say I was going to get it wrong. From Greenpeace. We're chatting break-free campaign. We're chatting climate change. Just some parting shots from you, Mandy. What is your comment for our listeners?
Well, I think the basic message is empowerment of the man on the street is letting him know that the climate change impacts that he's feeling, and the poorest of our poor communities, the ones feeling the impacts the most, wasn't the cyclist at the race on the weekend, was the people whose shacks were burnt down in those heavy winds.
Absolutely.
So, but by understanding that the impacts that you are actually feeling on climate change are as a result of our choices of energy mix. It's important that each and every person, grassroots level all the way to the top, understands a fully charged cell phone means coal emissions at the moment, and we need to change that.
Ernest, from you?
I completely agree with Mandy. Although on other side of the flip coin, I say that we need to really explore a lot of usage in our biomass materials. South Africa is very rich on biomass materials, and for instance, we do have a lot of implants of your biogas digesters down in Vaal, where a lot of schools are now using biogas digesters to produce your gas, for your gas stoves to function. And in those schools, they cook food through the means of those biogas digesters. You've got your thermal energy, you've got your hydro energy, like you mentioned before, Diane, and we've got your wave energy that you can collect down on your coastal places. And there are means and ways how we can harness that, and put that into action. But like Mandy mentioned before, we need to have a lot of storage for that, lots of reservoirs for that, to reserve such type of energies, just for, in terms of rainy days, when we're lacking of such, so as for us to be able to replace one with the other. And in the end, I think we need to have also the balance of these energy types. We cannot just go monotonous, use one type of energy too and then think that we will win it. We need to have balance of energy types. We still need coal, but we need it minimally because we don't want emissions from coal. Emissions from coal, as we said before, they kill people, they cause health hazards to people's lives. So we really have to be really have to be sure that we make a balance in terms of our energy types. Nuclear, definitely no from me.
Yay.
I am an anti-nuclear activist. And yes, with that, I think we can go forward as South Africans and make our country be better, a place to live at.
Great. Thanks, guys. I think we're running out of time. Lerato, we'll forgive you now for not rapping because you're recording all of this. But we leave it at that, guys. We're saying fossil fuels cost, nuclear costs, clean energy pays. And what we say on the show is South Africa has 54 million voices. I'm using mine. Use yours. Till next time.
Stay tuned to Green Ovation, the show that gets you talking, keeps you informed on climate change, innovation, and green entrepreneurs who are changing the country, the continent, and the world. Sustainability, innovation, entrepreneurship, just a few of our favorite things. Find out more about us on greenovationsA.co.za. Follow me, Connect, on Twitter at @DD_Naidu now.